Good morning. This is Tom Watson, and we're going to begin the seminar this morning. The topic is Siemens SINAMICS Drives Pyramid. I'm not sure who in marketing came up with that, but it's not really a full pyramid. It's going to be a little bit different than that. Siemens does offer a very broad range of drive applications, and to fit those applications, there's a wide range of drive families that they offer. And those vary from very simple shaft turners like the new V20 to full multi-axis motion control. And whichever your need is, we're very confident that Siemens and C&E sales can help you meet that. As you can see from the list, there's a very broad selection of drives down here, drive options. And across the top is some of the features that we have. And we'll kind of go into the topics at the top. Open design is what's called a chassis design. That's a module or a drive that's intended to be put inside an enclosure. The distributed products, and we'll see later cabinet products, come ready to be mounted on the wall, ready to be hooked up, used for your applications. Control mode, you see this column here of volts, hertz, V, H, Z, and vector modes. Two different kinds of controls. All the drives that have vector capabilities also have the volts, hertz capabilities. But as you can see, the V20, the G110, and the G110D only have volts, hertz capabilities. Some drives are available in 240, others are available in 480 on up. You see there's a focus on some drives to pumps and fans, and that's a wide application, and there's a lot of energy reduction that can be attained by using drives in those areas. And Siemens has several drives that are focused particularly on that applications. Profinet and other bus structures is an important consideration when picking out a drive. Communications options are very broad in most of the drives from Siemens, but not in all. And that's an important distinction to take into consideration when you're looking at the drive in your particular application. We'll talk about some of those. Safety is another area that we want to stress. The newer drives, most of the newer drives are available with safety integrated functions such as safe torque off and additional safety with speed monitoring. And the advantage of that is that it integrates easily into your safety circuitry without the need for additional contactors or components. Not all of the Siemens drives have that capability, however, so you need to look at your application to see if that's a requirement. And the final column heading is power regen. One of the new exciting things that we have in some of the Siemens lines is the ability to actually take power that in previous generations would have been bled off with resistors as heat, now can be pumped right back into the incoming power grid, thus saving you considerable cost in energy conservation in some particular applications. On the side down here, we'll go through most of these products, and I want to show one kind of distinction. SINAMICS is the current product offering that's advancing into the future. MicroMaster drives at the bottom are still available and will be for some time, but they're in the process of being replaced by the newer drives. And so on existing applications where you have MicroMaster drives and you want to replicate those are still available and can be an economical way to go. But increasingly you will find that SINAMICS is the product of the future and where you should turn to. The V20 is a new family just introduced this year. We're very excited about some of the capabilities of it. It's a great product for basic shaft turners, for standalone applications. It is designed specifically for the smaller range of products. As you can see, 6 horsepower up to 20 horsepower. It's available in 200 and 380, 480 volt range. IP20 is the category, so it does need to be mounted inside an enclosure in most applications. And it is limited to volts hertz mode. However, it's easy. Just because it's easy to install, it's easy to use, it's easy to save money, but it is a very powerful drive. Built into it is not only very strong components, and so that it's for its range of power, it's very robust, but also it has some wizards and commissioning tools built in to make it easy to apply in a number of applications. A nice feature of the drive is out of the box you can use it for push-through mounting through a hole in the back of the enclosure to ventilate heat, or you can use it for wall mounting. And it's possible to mount either one of those configurations side by side. So if you have multiple drives, you can mount them right next to each other in your enclosure, or you can push through the back and dump the heat outside the enclosure. From a communication standpoint, the V20s are limited to just USS and Modbus RTU, and those are brought to terminals on the front of the drive, so you can easily wire to those for networking. But again, those are limited to just those two protocols. Both are RS-485 serial communications links. In some cases, you may require additional communications modules on your PLC or other devices to communicate with the V20s. There is an integrated braking chopper on the larger size drives, so we can add resistors and do braking with the units. The front terminals are cage clamp, so you depress with a screwdriver, depress a little tab, put the wire inside the front and release it. So it's very quick to connect the terminals in your field. And must note that that's limited to the low voltage control terminals on the front panel, not to the power terminals. Those are still screw. A nice feature of the V20 is they have wizards that help you simplify the configuration. In the documentation that comes with the drive, they explain wizards set up for I/O and wizards set up for application. And by selecting a given wizard, you can very quickly configure the drive or pre-configure the drive to match up with your application. So if you're doing a pump control, there's a standard I/O configuration for that and a standard application configuration. Makes it very quick to come up and set up. One nice feature of the drive is by using an optional parameter loader, you can move the configuration from one drive to another. You can record it on one, set it up and configure it without the 480, or excuse me, the line voltage to it, and then you can move that to another drive to duplicate it. There's connection, as we mentioned earlier, there's connection macros and application macros that really help in setup and configuration and commissioning. There's a keep running mode, and that looks at power fluctuations coming into the line, and in many cases will help ride through those power fluctuations to keep the drive and system running. And there's a wide range of voltages available, and the cooling design, especially with the push-through, makes it a very robust application. A nice feature of the eco mode is that if your system varies from running to an idle state, it constantly monitors the flux, and if you're at a zero speed, it's going to drop off the flux, which saves you a considerable amount of energy in those applications that start and stop frequently. And also there's a hibernation mode that kind of falls in with that, so that it drops the voltage to the motor when it's not in use. If you have applications where you have multiple drives, and if those drives vary in the timing of the load, you can do a DC coupling where the energy generated by braking in one drive can be fed into the other drive. This is really nice if you're doing test stands where you're running a motor on one end and then using a second motor for braking for testing. The generation can be coupled back in, can greatly reduce the amount of energy consumption that you're using. There's some process optimization. You do have PID loop controls, other features that are normally used to handle process analog inputs, analog outputs. And it's very competitively priced. The V20 is our low-cost leader for applications. But again, it's intended for standalone applications, not for networking, not for tightly integrated into PLC systems. There is a basic operator panel that is included on the front of the drive. You can also remote a second operator panel with an optional cable assembly and front panel interface. So if you're interested in those, please alert your CNE account rep and they will assist you in specifying that. And again, stress, this is a standalone kind of drive. It's intended for individual pumps, fans, compressors are its big use. Also, there is a wizard for conveyor belts to set up so that you can stage the ramping up and ramping down of the speed control. In pumps and fans, it will do variable torque, and so it will optimize the output to the motor to meet the pump curves or the fan curves. You can also do some staging of pumps with the drive for balancing of loads. Limitations on the drive: 20 horsepower maximum is the max this V20 family goes. And unlike all the other drives available from Siemens, there is no commissioning software that's available for the drives, and none that has been announced for the future. So this is not supported by Starter or Start Drive, which are the commissioning packages that are used on all the other drives that we'll talk about today. So if you're used to using a PC to commission your platform, to upload parameters and download parameters, to do documentation and maintenance, that's not available for the V20 family. An important consideration in some applications. Also, USS and Modbus RTU are the only networks that are supported. This is not an Ethernet drive, not a Profibus or Profinet drive. And again, it's intended for standalone applications. Are there any questions from you about the V20 series? Any information that you would like to have? I'll open up the mics. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, we'll go on. The next family is the G110 family. G110s have been out for a number of years. They will eventually be replaced by the V20 and by other product announcements from the SINAMICS line, but it's still a very nice little drive for 200 volt applications, 1.6 horsepower to 4 horsepower. Like the V20, it has the RS-232 communications, Modbus RTU, but it does have Starter for commissioning, which is a very handy feature to have. The drive is similar to the applications from the V20. It's configured for pumps and fans, conveyors, and small mixers. The G120 line is our full-featured line of variable frequency drives from Siemens. It has a number of variations, and we'll go over a few of those. But it's the broadest line that Siemens offers in drives, and we're excited about some of the new offerings that are coming out right now that are being released this summer and this fall. The G120 family of featured drives is used for a broad range of applications, and I want to stress it's part of the totally integrated automation approach that Siemens has for integrating all of the automation products that you would have in your factory, from PLCs to HMIs to drives and controls. Those are all can be tightly linked together across networking, make them widely available to applications. This greatly assists you when you're doing design and configuration, because the tag names and the product parameters that are available in the drives are also available then across the networks to PLCs and other devices. Makes development much easier than the standalone applications. As you can see, they're used for pumps, fans, and compressors, and there's a particular family, subfamily of the G120 that's geared towards those. They're used quite often with mixers and mills, agitators, extruders, centrifuges. We see them in material handling applications. We see them in steel mills and roller applications. Very broad range of applications that we can do with the G120 family. Most of the G120 family, with one exception, we'll talk about the G120Cs in a couple moments, but they're made up of separate components so that you can have an optimal configuration based on your needs. One of the components that's required for every drive is a power module, and there are several different flavors of those available, from a non-regenerative, a basic power module, through a fully regenerative power module that can regen voltage back out onto the line in a nice, clean fashion. And that's one of the exciting things that distinguishes Siemens from a number of our competitors, is the ability to cleanly put power back out on the line. This is really useful for applications where you have deceleration of loads that would typically be handled by putting a braking resistor on the drive, dumping that power out as heat in the environment. Now we can put that back out as incoming line voltage. And the G120 family is geared to provide that in the higher end power modules. You also have control unit options, and there's several different control units that you can go for. Some of those are specifically geared toward particular applications. There's a G120P that we'll talk about that's geared towards pump applications, pumps, fans, and compressors. The E series is more of the general purpose extended I/O, used for a lot of the applications in industry. And we're very excited about the new CU250S-2 drives, which have speed control and are just being introduced with positioning control with encoder feedback. So a broad range of applications. Now we can look at doing servo applications with the G drives. Communications is a huge benefit of the G120 family. Besides the USS and Modbus RTU that the V20 and the G110 have, you can order the drives with CAN Open, Profibus, and then Profi Ethernet, an Ethernet-based drive that supports both Profinet and Ethernet IP. So we can provide you a drive that you can standardize on in your applications, and then roll out that for whatever control family that you're currently using. We see that as a big plus for OEMs especially, where they have customers that use Siemens in some applications. Other customers may have other brands that they're interested in. You can have a drive that lives in both those worlds. So the communications is a big plus on the G120 drives. With that communications, we can do total control across the network using Profi Drive, which is a agreed upon set of protocols and messages that are set up in Siemens PLCs to talk and control with Siemens drives. G120 family also has options on nearly all of the controllers for safety integrated functions. Safe torque off is pretty much standard across the G120 line, but there's also options for a higher degree of safety control. So you can do safe limited speed without encoder feedback, and now with the G120S or G250S, you can also have encoder feedback for safe speed limiting, and that's very useful for applications where you need to control the speed at a slow level for maintenance purposes, or to release safety gates when the speed has been confirmed to be down at zero speed. Here's a listing of the current offerings in the controllers, and it's not quite exactly up to date, but it's very close. You have a CU240B-2. It's a basic controller unit. As you can see, it has 3 digital inputs, 1 digital output, an analog input, and an analog output. Pretty basic hardware. Does most of the functionality of its bigger brothers and sisters, but limited on the I/O capability. For just a little bit more in cost, you can jump up to the CU240E-2, and it has a much wider range of I/O added to it. Gives you a lot more functionality from that standpoint. If we go up to the CU230P, that's used for pumps and HVAC type applications. It has some particular software advantages in that area. And then the new latest and greatest is the CU250S-2 units and DP for Profibus. There's also PN for Profinet available. And those are going to give us a lot more capability for not only standard vector control, torque control, VF control, but also for encoder feedback for positioning. In any given drive configuration, you're going to take one of the controller units and you're going to mount it to the front of a power module, and across the bottom you see some of the power module offerings. These are displayed with the controller mounted on them. This is a nice feature from the standpoint of if you have a number of different sizes of drives in your house, you can stock one control unit that you use across the board, and then match it up with a variety of power modules geared toward the motors that you're actually driving. So from a stocking standpoint, on occasion there is an advantage for using the separate power modules and control units. The G120 has a broad range of features for optimizing applications. We mentioned Profi Safe earlier and Profi Drive. We also have Profi Energy, which is an agreed upon format for monitoring parameters of the energy consumption. And there are HMI applications and PLC applications that communicate with the drives pull that information out so it can be readily displayed and recorded and passed on to monitoring. The Profi drive functions make it very easy to commission drives because there's an agreed upon format for all of the parameters being passed back and forth between the PLC and the drive units. It makes setup of the your PLC program with standard function blocks that provide the communications. And it makes the drive commissioning very nice and easy because it's geared to communicate readily across that Profi drive. Profi Safe is used for on approved networks with approved controllers. Excuse me. So that you do not need to have hardwired safety strings across your system. This has a big advantage on widely distributed applications where we can run the safety stops into the controller, communicate that over either Profibus or Profinet to the drives, and still have a high degree of safety at the drive end. This allows you to eliminate, in many cases, the use of contactors before or after the drive, which can greatly reduce both panel size and the cost of the projects. As we mentioned, there's a broad range of communication selections: Profinet, Ethernet IP, Profibus, CAN-Open, USS, and Modbus RTU. The F series, the extent options for F for safety integrated provide you with safe limited speed without the use of encoders. And again, this is not required for most applications, but is available for those that need it. We have a broad range of control options available in the G120 line. PID for process applications, flux current control for monitoring or controlling the amount of current that you send out to a drive, and torque control with or without encoders. And then with the new PM250 line, we can do energy regen back to the grid again. A great feature from the perspective of those people that are in charge of commissioning the drives and designing them is the tools that are available for download from the website or from with DVDs from C&E Sales. Sizer is a configuration tool that allows you to go in and configure your bill of material before you order, matching the application requirements up with the drive. And that's a very powerful tool. It's set up to handle a wide range of applications. And then Starter, or for the series of drives when they are used with Step 7 V5 or the new TIA Portal Start Drive software, allows you a very full-featured commissioning of the drive while you're setting up and going online. Both Starter and Portal Start Drive have trace functions, control panels, and identification functions that are very useful in commissioning the drives and in debugging problems with drives. You can go online with your laptop or PC, monitor the conditions of the drive. The trace function is particularly nice because you can set up triggers that are based on fault conditions or conditions that are suspected of causing faults, and the drive will continue to run with those until that condition occurs, and then take a snapshot of the critical parameters within a certain time period of that trigger. So you can actually see values before an event occurred and then after the event occurred. Very powerful tool for debugging applications. Like the V20 family, there are extensive wizards available to configure your I/O, your communications. These make it simple to select based on whether you're using a communication scheme, whether you're using a hardwired terminal-based start-stop to set up the drive for your particular application. And then with Starter and also with Sizer, there's extensive function and help screens to guide you through the process, and those are geared toward each particular drive package. So when you're dealing with a V20, I'm sorry, with a G120 drive, you'll see help screens for the G120. If you're using an S120, you'll see a different set of screens. Kind of a subset of the G120 and a little bit different design is the G120C, or compact drive. In the G120C, they've bundled the power module with a controller. It's one part number, it's one physical system rather than two separate entities. So you order a particular part number and it comes with the controller and the power module matched up as one unit. It makes it very simple to do replacements if necessary. It's a little bit more compact in size, so it can save a little bit of panel space, not a great deal, but some. They're available in 3/4 to 25 horsepower in the 380 volt to 40 volt range. And it supports vector control, but also volts, hertz, and eco control methods. It has the same network options available to it as the G120 family. So you have Profibus, Profinet, CAN Open, Ethernet IP, and USS RTU, Modbus RTU. It is an IP20, so it is intended to be mounted inside an enclosure, like the other drives we've talked about so far. It comes with safe torque off, but does not have the extended safety functions available. So if you do need the extended safety functions, you need to go to a G120. And it does have a nice little built-in energy savings calculator that you can use. Again, a key feature is there's one part number for the complete drive package. So you order a part number. That does not include, however, the basic operator panel or the intelligent operator panel. That is a separate part number that you must order and snaps onto the front of the drive. Many customers only purchase one basic operator panel or intelligent operator panel. They move that from one drive to another, so you can save some costs there. The G120C family is fully integrated into the totally integrated automation systems. So like a G120, it can be used with Profi Drive, Profi Energy. You can monitor the systems across the PLC, use the same exact function blocks in a S7300 or S71200 or 1500 to communicate with the G120C as you would with a G120, which makes programming nice and straightforward. And again, it also uses Starter or TIA Portal Starter software for commissioning a drive. Very handy, very easy to use. It does have safe torque off, as we said. It does not have the extended safety functions. It's competitively priced, a little bit more than the V20, but not substantially. And it's the drive that we recommend for most applications in the 1 to 20 horsepower range. Feature about the G120, it has the highest power density in its class, and you can mount those side by side. And typical totally integrated automation applications are pumps, fans, and compressors, material handling and conveyor systems. They are used quite often with mixers and extruders. And I apologize for the marking of the, I guess it's paragraph starts. I'm not sure how that got in there this morning. Please bear with me on that. Limitations are the 25 horsepower maximum and it's only available in the 380 to 480 volt range. There are no 230 volt units. So at this point, we'll take a quick minute and we'll stop and see if there's any questions from you folks. Any questions? I've unmuted everyone. Okay, we'll go on with the presentation then. The next family that we'll talk about is the G110 and G120D drives. These are enclosed, if you will, or distributed drive feature. It's intended to be mounted right out on the machine. They're used quite often for conveyor applications. Can also be used for pump applications. Areas that you do not have an encoder that you may need an encoder with. So this is an option where we can monitor the speed and feed it into the drive on the G120D-2 units. The form factor is very similar between the two units. The difference is the G110D is intended for just basic speed control. The G120D2 has more vector control, broader range of network options, and safety functions are available in that G120D. You can see from the front panel that there are plug-ins, quick disconnects, if you will, for your I/O. Makes it easy to connect in the field. There are certain options that you can order: start, stop, and jog push buttons on the front. And here's our comparison between the two. They're both 460 volt drives, up to 10 horsepower. The G110 has software braking with DC injection, and you can add braking resistors and transistors. The G120D has energy feedback, so you can regen to the line. Again, this is a great way to do energy savings, especially if you have loads that are providing resistance or power back into the drive. As you're decelerating loads, if you're using in hoist applications where you're raising and then lowering, and you have gravity putting work back into the line, you can feed that back out on the line with the G120D. That is not available in the G110. You can see that there's a little bit more I/O on the G120, and it has the full communications of Profibus, Profinet available to it. The G110 is ASI interface, so it's very limited in the communication scheme, but still a very good local drive. Any questions about the G110D or G120D series? Okay, if no questions, we'll go on. A subfamily of the G120 is the G120P family, and that's a series of protected drives intended for pumps, fans, and compressors. They're available from 3/4 to 125 horsepower in the 380 to 480 volt range. As you can see from the photo, they're available in a NEMA 12 and IP54 option, where the drive is enclosed. It can be taken out and mounted right on the wall next to a pump or a fan, so it simplifies your applications. They're also available with the same control capabilities in an IP20, similar to the G120 series. So there's a little bit of cost difference between those two options. But where we see most interest in this drive is in applications where you have a series of pumps and you want the communications flexibility of the G120 line, and a pre-configured enclosure that you can mount right next to the drive. They are set up with 4 PID controllers, and you can also do pump staging up to 4 pumps with this, so that you can configure the drives to share the load or to sequence through pumps so that you spread wear of each pump over the multiple pumps. Quite often that needs to be done in a PLC or done through other timers or sequencing. That capability is now built into the G120P family. So again, you can save costs in your application by doing everything in the drive. Formerly, that might have required external equipment to do your control. You have the same network options as the rest of the G120 line. So you can do Profibus, Profinet, Ethernet IP, Modbus RTU. It does have the eco mode, again, like some of the newer drives, so you can adapt the current to the load. And it does support auto and flying restart. So if you have large blowers or fan assemblies with a lot of inertia out there that once they're running, you want to come online with them after they've been turned off but are still moving. If you want to go back online with those, you can do so without causing an abrupt change in the control of them. And like the rest of the systems, they are available with configuration wizards to help you through the selection of any given application. Here are some of the wizards, most of the wizards, not all of them. You have pressure control for exhaust fans, so you can set up to maintain a constant pressure in exhaust. And the same with cooling tower fans for controlling water temperature. So you can control the fan speed on a cooling tower to adapt to changes in the cooling water, the water that's being cooled coming through the system. This can save you quite a bit of energy, so that if the water is already pretty cool that's coming back, you can throttle down the fan automatically. As the water temp increases from a heavier load, you can bring the fan speed up. That can all be controlled directly by the G120Ps. They have fans for control of the air quality in stairwells and also in car parks, with the added feature of fire emergency operation. So you can have a normal operation, and then you can also have a forced operation for fire emergencies. You can do fans for supplying air for HVAC. There's a wizard to control that. Wizards for pump control of pressure, control of level, control of temperature, and then for compressor pressure control. All handy wizards that you can go through with Starter or with the Intelligent Operator Panel to configure the drive for those applications. The next family line is the G120E family. This is a pretty new offering from Siemens. These are pre-configured enclosures that are designed to meet UL 508C listing. So they are pre-designed with disconnects, circuit protection devices, an intelligent operator panel mounted in the door. There are a few other options that you can specify with them, and you can select which G120 controller you're using with the units. Delivery is very quick, typically under 3 weeks, and they range from 1 to 200 horsepower in the 460 to 480 volt range. Optionally, with a slightly longer lead time, I believe you can go down into the a 380 volt range. There is both 2-quadrant and 4-quadrant infeeds available. So the 2-quadrant would be a non-regen infeed power module. The 4-quadrant would be a fully regen module, so that you can, again, based on the load conditions that you have, you can put power back out onto the line rather than dumping it to a resistor, wasting that power. Same network options that we have with the rest of the G120 family. are available in the G120E line. What is the SINAMICS G120E? It is the new edition, pushed out this past spring. Low horsepower applications, they go down to 1. They really gear it for 20 horsepower on up, but they can do the 1 horsepower. It's just a pretty large package. From 20 horsepower on up, very nice sizing of applications. Variants for the standard 6-pulse drive, which is the 2-quadrant drive, or the 4-quadrant in-feed with the PM250. And there's 3 frame sizes. You can see those: 1 to 20, 25 to 60, and 75 to 200. The latter is a floor mount. The previous 2 are wall mount. It's intended to kind of fill a gap between some of the other drive offerings from Siemens. The G150 we'll talk about in a little bit. Those start around efficiently at around 150 horsepower on up. This G120E line kind of fills in below that, and they're going after systems where, in many cases, for building systems, commercial systems, where people are looking for a prepackaged design. But also, this can be very effective for OEMs. You buy the drive; it's completely sized properly. You get full design documentation, so that you know exactly what you're getting. Has a full feature here of standard flange-mounted disconnects, intelligent operator panels on the door. You've got mounting plates for pilot devices, and there are some predefined configurations you can order for those. In some of the cases, you've got circuit protection in the front. You can order them with input line reactors for the PM240 series, the non-regen series. They carry a short circuit current rating of 65 kVA for the UL standard for all ratings. And again, the supply is 460 to 480 volts. We're finding that these are pretty competitively priced in the marketplace. And again, the delivery is predefined. A nice feature about this from the standpoint of a user is you really don't need to put any engineering into this enclosure, this cabinet. Siemens provides the full set of documentation. Back up here. And it's seal UL 508C listed. And here's the documentation you get. Technical data sheets, the description, list of all the components, drawings for the full system, all in standard format, and then a complete list of manuals for it. Back up here. Here are the list of the control units that are available. So you can order the same CU G120P controllers that we talked about in the G120P line, which were limited in capacity. Now you can go up to 200 horsepower in those drives by going into the E series with the same control units. Also, we can go up into the S series control units so that you can have encoder feedback on drives. So a very full function set of controllers. And we'll go forward here. The G130 is the next series on up. So we'll take a quick minute here and see if there's any questions from the audience on anything we've talked about so far. Any concerns or questions on the G120E family? Okay. The G130 family has been out for, I believe, 5 or 6 years. It's for higher horsepower applications. And these are chassis drives so that you would mount these in your enclosure. They're available in 150 to 750 horsepower in the 380 to 480 volt range and the 500 to 600 volt range. They're up to 1,075 horsepower in the higher voltage, 660 to 690 range. They have a special feature called edge modulation, which is the technique that is used to set out the frequency going to the motor, and that allows you to get a very high ratio of voltage, incoming voltage to voltage to the motor ratio of 97%, and yet it minimizes harmonics. Past technologies, you had a trade-off. Either you had a high voltage level and high harmonics, or you were able to minimize harmonics, but you lost some of the voltage coming in line, typically 90 to 93%. So with the new edge modulation that is a Siemens feature, we can get a much higher ratio of voltage to incoming voltage to the motor voltage, which gives you much more efficiency, and yet we still minimize the harmonics going out onto the line. The G130 has the full range of network options we've talked about before. And they're used typically for high horsepower applications such as pumps and fans, compressors, especially for mixers, mills, and extruders. The G130 is a good choice for the high horsepower applications. Well tested and well proven control technology, and very flexible control options. Again, they use starter and sizer, the tools to configure and size the drives. The G150 family are G130 chassis units that are mounted in predefined enclosures. You can see there's much higher horsepower range, and that's because they can parallel the power modules from the G130s. They can parallel those and get much higher output with a pre-configured design. Again, you don't need to go in and do the design yourself. These are fully designed functional units ready to set out on your factory floor and tie into your equipment. And you can see up to 36,000 or 3,600 horsepower in a 690 drive, 1,200 horsepower in a 480 volt drive. That concludes the presentation. We've gotten a broad range of drives available. And again, I'm opening up for questions or concerns, comments. I want to thank you for participating in the seminar this morning. If you have follow-up questions, please feel free to contact me. My email address is twatson@cesales.com, or call our 800 number, 800-228-2790. Ask for technical support. And on behalf of myself and my other associates, Jay Schwank has moved recently from inside technical support. He will be our new motion specialist for Ohio and parts of Kentucky. Kevin Young is also a motion specialist, been with us for quite a while. He handles parts of Indiana and Kentucky as well. So if you have questions, just give us a call and we'll be happy to serve you. This concludes the seminar. Thank you very much.